It is officially confirmed. Project Veritas follows up their previous bombshell report with yet another bombshell video, which shows ballot harvesters exchanging $200 for election ballots in this cash for ballot fraud scheme that they were running in Ilhan Omar's district. It also shows them admitting on video that Ilhan Omar was the one who came up with this entire scheme. So on top of her, what's going on, what happened with her marriage that was reported by the the Star Tribune, which is a Pulitzer Prize winning outlet, and then what happened with her giving her boyfriend, $250,000. Now we're talking about this cash for ballot fraud scheme that was happening in her district, where people are on video admitting that Ilhan Omar was the one who came up with this all and exchanging money for general election ballots. And, of course, the mainstream media is not talking about this at all because the mainstream media can't fact-check this because these videos are undeniable. The proof is right there in these videos. And this newest video that they released is probably the best of them all. We're going to play a short clip from this newest video that they released, but we also have this report from the New York Post that just came out, and it says that Minneapolis police are probing the alleged ballot harvesting plot that helps Representative Ilhan Omar and her connection to this. Now, I don't know if this is going to go that far, considering the fact that Keith Ellison is the Attorney General in Minnesota. And, of course, we know that Keith Ellison hid the body camera footage for the George Floyd incident all the way up until it was leaked, until the Daily Mail had to find it, had to get the body camera footage, and had to leak the body camera footage. So, of course, Keith Ellison is going to protect Ilhan Omar. The Democratic Party is going to protect Ilhan Omar. And the mainstream media is going to protect Ilhan Omar. But outside of Ilhan Omar, we have many other news reports coming out of fraud happening on a massive scale in Texas, in California, in New York City. So we're going to go through all of those reports next. Before we get started, though, I just want to remind you to check out the links in the description below and go to either Patreon or Subscribestar. These are both essentially the same sort of a platform. Subscribestar is available for those who don't want to support on Patreon or support Patreon. And at the middle tier, $5 a month for Subscribestar and Patreon, you get access to all of the full-length live streams from DLive, also other exclusive content, debates that have happened on my YouTube channel before I was terminated permanently, between Nick and all sorts of other different characters. So make sure to check the links in the description below. The show continuing completely relies on you. So whether it's through the super chats on the live show, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific time on DLive.tv/Vincent James, or Subscribestar or Patreon, the show completely relies on you. And we appreciate your support. So make sure to check the links in the description below for that. So let's get to this first story here. So this is from the New York Post, and it says the Minneapolis police are probing an alleged ballot harvesting plot helping Representative Ilhan Omar. It says a police investigation has been launched into the alleged ballot harvesting plot, helping Progressive Squad member Representative Ilhan Omar. Quote, allegations of voter fraud being evaluated. The Minneapolis Police Department announced on Twitter Monday, hours after President Trump called for an investigation into the misdeeds. The MPD is aware of the allegations of vote harvesting. We are in the process of looking into the validity of those statements, the department said. The force added that no further information is available at this time, including whether the Democratic Congresswoman would be involved in the probe. The probe surrounds a video posted by Project Veritas late Sunday in which Laban Mohammed, the brother of Minneapolis City Council member Jamal Osman, is shown with ballots filling his car's dashboard. I have 300 ballots in my car right now. And now we're talking about another video that came out that shows the exchange of cash for ballots. Now, remember, in the state of Minnesota, actually in pretty much every state, you can only have one designated person per 3 absentee ballots. This is hundreds. He's talking about hundreds of absentee ballots in his car. And someone pointed this out before we get to this clip. Ryan Grodusky pointed this out, and he made a really good point. He said, just to convey how serious this is, Al Franken won his Senate seat by a few hundred votes counted after Election Day. The possible fraud in that election led to the passage of Obamacare and a variety of other things, of course. But I think that the way that he put this really shows the seriousness of this. And if this is happening in Ilhan Omar's district, if this is happening in Texas, we're going to go over a story next about that. If this is happening in New York City, if this has happened in other districts during the 2018 midterm elections on a massive scale, then this is going to happen in the general election. And it's going to be an absolute mess in the general election, especially once we get to the story about New York, which is coming up here next. But I'm going to play a little bit from this clip. This is from Project Veritas. Take a listen to this right now.
Project Veritas has received an explosive piece of tape. The tape you're about to see shows a man buying a registration form for an absentee ballot from a voter, giving him, quote, pocket money, unquote, of $200 and expecting to collect his ballot when the voter receives it.
But that's illegal. Why?
We don't care illegal. أنا بالعقل وانا فوق.
How much are you?
Good one.
She's the one who came up with all this.
So she did it. She started this whole thing with the pay to vote.
Yeah.
Ilhan, your group.
So the people that work for Ilhan are actually counting the ballots, counting the vote.
And they become a manager in the prison too.
So there you go. Ilhan Omar definitely connected in all of this, according to journalists who had some undercover cameras on them. I do want to get to one thing, and I was going to save this for later, but I do want to mention this. This is why it's extremely important for us to do something about immigrants who run for office. They should have to be, just like the president, they should have to be born in this country in order to run for office. There have been too many times, like this article from the redelephants.com, our website, there have been too many times where we have people, particularly Chinese agents, spying on the U.S. for the Chinese government, like this New York police department officer. So this person isn't running for office. He's not a politician, but he's working for the government in some capacity. And then, of course, we had this former CIA officer who was arrested and charged with espionage. Now, here's the thing. A couple of these people were actually born here. We've seen many stories just like this, and a couple of them are regarding people who were actually born in the country, but showing more allegiance to the country from which their ancestors came. And this is the problem with a multicultural, mass, multiracial society. You're always going to get not only ethnic conflict, like we talk a lot about on the show. I mean, that's what the whole Black Lives Matter thing is about. Racial conflict, race riots, ethnic conflict. But also you get this thing with people who are running for office, like Ilhan Omar. Right? Ilhan Omar, I mean, Trump even said this, and he's probably the only Republican that had the courage to say something like this, but he was like, hey, how's it going in your country? You want to come here and tell us how to run our country? How's it going in your country?
We're going to win the state of Minnesota because of her, they say. She's telling us how to run our country. How did you do where you came from? How is your country doing? She's going to tell us, she's telling us how to run our country.
How's that working out for the country that you came from? And then they come over here, they call us racist, they slander our country, they slander the way that we run the country, and then they run for office and try to make the country exactly like their country. I mean, it's much like, and I talked about this yesterday, it's like the liberals who move from California to Idaho or from California to Montana or something like this, and they're going to make the state have progress and make the state exactly like the California that they came from, when their policies, their ideology, their ideas destroyed the state that they just moved from. And they moved from that state because they destroyed that state, particularly with mass immigration. But I want to move on to this. Now, you probably remember this article. This is from the dailymail.com. Exclusive, is Ilhan Omar having an affair with this Dem strategist? And it turns out she was. But not only was she also gave him more than $250,000. Omar's camp has paid Minet's company, E Street Group, more than $250,000 in consulting fees and travel expenses, dating from last August until June 11th, according to the Federal Election Commission records. She also had a campaign finance violation. She had to pay back a few $1,000s, I think, because she was paying for her boyfriend, his travel, his extravagant travel fees. And then, of course, we have this Star Tribune article, which we went over briefly yesterday, which is a Pulitzer Prize-winning outlet that suggests that it's probably the case that she married her brother to skirt immigration laws. And so the question is, yes, there's an investigation being done by the Minneapolis Police Department, but is it going to go any further than that? Because we know how Keith Ellison runs the state of Minnesota. We know that he's going to hide things. We know that he's going to protect Ilhan Omar. We know that the mainstream media is going to protect Ilhan Omar. They're not going to report on these things or report the truth about this or say anything about this at all, honestly. Even though this was trending on Twitter for like 2 days straight. I think for 48 hours, Cash for Ballots had like 100,000 tweets. It was trending on Twitter. I think Twitter even tweaked their trending to make it not trend anymore. Now, we have this story in Texas, too. This just came out. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announces 134 felony voter fraud charges in connection with the 2018 Dem primary. So this was happening in Ilhan Omar's district. This was happening in many other districts across the country. And then we have this new report that just came out from the NYC Board of Elections. They're looking into absentee ballot errors, and it's not just like a small error. If we read on, it says as many as 100,000 voters in Brooklyn have been affected by this mistake. The debacle has sent up red flags for voter advocates. With just 5 weeks to go until Election Day, a mass error sent thousands of mixed ballots and return envelopes to voters in Brooklyn. So not just thousands, but 100,000. So tens of thousands. Now, of course, the debates are going to be happening. We're going to see if this comes up. We're not sure. By the time you're watching this video, the first debate would have already happened. But, I mean, something definitely has to be done about this. Something definitely has to be done about this outside of just complaining about this on Twitter or Trump tweeting about this on Twitter. Something has to be done about this. She has to be investigated. And on top of that, we have to really give thought to who runs for office in this country, who can run for office in this country, and actually who can vote in this country. Because we know that George Soros, and this is not like a conspiracy theory, this was even, I think, talked about in the Washington Post a couple of years ago. The Open Society Foundation was funding this operation, this nonprofit operation that was setting up offices in like California and Texas and places like this, and paying that $1,500 fee that people need to go from green card permanent resident to actual citizen of the United States of America. This was being done in 2018, I think it was. I think they were trying to get people, citizens of the country in time to vote in the election. Now we have 10% of the electorate that are actually newly naturalized citizens. So I'm not sure how much of a part that played in that, but these nonprofit organizations were set up. They were paying the $1,500 fee that you need to pay. I think it's a little bit more than that now for someone to go from citizen or from green card holder to citizen. Now, thankfully, Trump has actually delayed this process over he's trying to delay this till after the election, of course, and he has been successful in delaying this process now. But once again, this has been going on since 2018, so we don't know how many people actually got into made that next step because they were paying off this fee that they just couldn't pay for. They didn't have the money. They couldn't afford to do it. On top of that, I do want to mention one other Trump success here. This is from Rosa A. Clemente, and she's a black Puerto Rican Afro-Latina to run for vice president, Green Party. Bronx-born. She says, tomorrow I'm supposed to present a keynote unapologetically black Afro-Latinx culture and identity to the National Credit Union Administration, a federal agency. Today, less than 24 hours due to the executive order that was signed 10 days ago, my gig was canceled. So Trump's executive order on critical race theory doing the work that it's supposed to. And that's what I have for you on Ilhan Omar and the cash for ballots scam. Beloved brothers and sisters, let us rejoice in our God, for he takes great delight in bestowing benefits on his people. Let us fervently pray, increase your grace and your peace, Lord, eternal God, for whom 1,000 years are like the passing day. My goal is to eventually become a powerhouse of truth. That is why it is imperative that you check the links in the description below and go to either Patreon and Subscribestar and support us for at least the cost of a cup of coffee a month. We already have writers writing for TheRedElephants.com, but we'd like to bring on more in the near future. By the way, at TheRedElephants.com, you can also find t-shirts, hats, and other products. Check the links in the description below. It helps us out tremendously.